Sometimes you feel that something is off inside you. Even if you've had enough sleep, you wake up feeling empty. An indescribable fatigue, a weight bearing down on you. What if this fatigue isn't coming from the outside world? What if it's coming from ordinary habits that drain your spiritual vitality every day without you even realizing it? Rudolf Steiner spoke of an invisible body, the etheric body, the carrier of your vitality. This body, the carrier of vitality, can be damaged not by physical blows but by the way you think, speak, and live. And when this body weakens, you feel it as endless fatigue, an inner emptiness, a sense of being disconnected from your own spirit. In the next few minutes, you will discover 7 of these hidden habits. The aim is not to judge you, but to show you where your strength is leaking. These habits are not dramatic. In fact, most are almost invisible, but their effects are profound. They create cracks in your energetic body through which the light of your soul escapes. Steiner says that most people live in what he calls waking unconsciousness. They do things but don't truly live. Their spiritual power slowly drains away in a fatigue whose source they cannot understand. What you will learn here is not a quick fix. It is a mirror, and sometimes awareness is the first step toward change. The first of these silent energy thieves is your own thoughts. Not thinking, but thoughts taking hold of you and flowing uncontrollably and chaotically. Steiner defines this as undisciplined thinking, endless worries, internal conversations that lead nowhere, scenarios played out over and over again without reaching a solution. This way of thinking consumes much more energy than you might think. According to the understanding of Anthroposophy, every thought carries its own reality within it. It is not just a passing idea, but a force that has an effect. Disordered thoughts consume the essence of your etheric body like a leaky vessel. Every uncontrolled thought diminishes your vitality a little more. As your body weakens, it becomes harder to control your mind. A downward spiral forms, pulling you further down. The most destructive is internal criticism. It is directed not outward, but directly at yourself. You judge yourself, you condemn yourself, you scrutinize your every action, your every word. This is not healthy self-reflection. It is a kind of internal violence you inflict on your soul. This constant self-deprecation creates invisible wounds in the astral body, the thin layer that carries your emotions. And these wounds are invisible but bleed incessantly. They allow the light within you to escape until you can no longer feel yourself. This exhaustion stems not from thinking, but from the endless internal war you wage against yourself. Steiner knew that modern man consumes himself, not through his actions, but through his way of thinking. How much of your day do you spend lost in your mind, in cycles of repeating the same thoughts? And how often do you feel empty afterwards, as if someone had drained your energy? This first habit, chaotic thinking, works like an invisible parasite, feeding on your attention and life force. The insidious part of this habit is believing you need to think to find solutions. Yet most thoughts bring no solutions. They just circle back, repeating the same fears, the same doubts. Steiner realized that true insight arises not from chaos, but from stillness, from orderly, conscious thought, guided by a clear will. What usually emerges from this chaotic thinking is complaint. This is a natural continuation of inner unrest. What simmers in silence turns into speech, and with speech, its effect increases. This second habit, complaining as a way of life, may seem harmless. It may even provide a sense of relief. However, according to the insights of spiritual science, the opposite is true. Every complaint creates an astral substance, a dense, heavy energy that envelops your soul like fog. This substance is not metaphorical. Although it cannot be seen with the physical eye, it is real. It blocks access to the higher powers that could renew you. Imagine standing in a windowless room. The air is heavy, suffocating. The soul feels this way when surrounded by constant complaints. It cannot breathe. It cannot receive fresh light. And the more you complain, the thicker this fog becomes. There is a deception that many people do not realize. They think that complaining is liberating, that it helps to express pain. Yes, it is necessary to express pain. But there is a difference between voicing a wound and constantly repeating dissatisfaction. One is healing, the other is self-poisoning. When complaining becomes a habit, it becomes an identity. You are no longer someone who suffers. You become the suffering itself. Steiner described how the soul loses its ability to receive higher impressions through repeated complaints. The soul becomes insensitive, blind, and deaf to the soul's silent messages. Complaining acts like acid that corrodes the astral body. And as the corrosion increases, your ability to perceive the beauty, truth, and light that always exists, even in pain, diminishes. You become blind to the things that could save you. And this doesn't just affect you. Those who complain constantly also affect the people around them. Etheric bodies are not isolated. They are in constant interaction with each other. When you complain, you not only lower your own vibration, you also lower the energy of others. A collective field of exhaustion is created where no one can find strength anymore. Have you noticed how some people tire you out? Most of the time, it's not their words, but the energy they radiate. Complaining contains a subtle pleasure, a pleasure derived from one's own misfortune, drama, and the attention that suffering brings. It's hard to accept this because who wants to believe they cling to their pain? But Steiner knew this secret tendency of the human soul. Complaining gives you a role, an identity. It makes you the center of attention, even if it's painful. And letting go of that role means letting go not of the pain, but of your attachment to it. Another thing that drains your energy is rushing. You live in constant agitation, always on the move, always late. Your mind is at the next appointment, while your body is still here. Steiner saw this third habit, this escape from the present moment through endless acceleration, as a disease of modern times. Humanity has lost its rhythm. They have forgotten that life follows cycles, the change of day and night, the seasons, the coming and going of breath. These rhythms are not arbitrary. They are the language of the cosmos. When you do not follow this rhythm, you sever your connection to your source of life. The etheric body needs stops to renew itself. It needs moments of silence to reorganize itself. But if you run constantly, you don't give it that chance. It fragments. Its coherence is disrupted. And you feel this as an inner fragmentation, a feeling that even when you physically arrive somewhere, you haven't really arrived anywhere. This constant acceleration is not vitality. It is escape, an escape from the stillness waiting within you. Because in stillness, you encounter yourself, and this is what you unconsciously avoid. You hide behind activities, appointments, the illusion of productivity. But if you lose your soul in the process, what good is doing so much? Steiner warned, the person who is always in a hurry does not truly live. They skim the surface of life like a shadow, never diving deep. Insomnia without cause, inner restlessness, a racing heartbeat with no apparent reason. These are not illnesses. They are the cries of the etheric body. Rhythm, breath, and pauses to gather yourself are needed, but you don't listen. You keep going until collapse becomes inevitable. And even then, you wonder why you're so tired. In this accelerating world, there's a new kind of numbness. You constantly consume information, images, videos, news, an endless stream that never dries up. This fourth habit, passive stimulus consumption, is particularly insidious. Steiner did not live in the digital age, but he foresaw what would happen in the future. He spoke of a time when humans would be overwhelmed by external impressions until they lost the ability to generate their own thoughts. The voice of the external world silences the inner voice. When this happens, the inner self begins to fade. Every piece of information consumed without processing or digesting it means surrendering a part of your consciousness. You become a slave to the external. Your inner self dies. Every time you passively consume without processing or thinking, you surrender your consciousness. You allow others to think for you. Your ability to think actively dulls, and with it, your spiritual autonomy dies. You are no longer creative, only a receiver. Steiner saw active thinking as the foundation of all spiritual development. Without this foundation, freedom, understanding, or connection to higher realms is impossible. Constant consumption also numbs the astral body. It loses its sensitivity to subtle impressions. Think of an instrument constantly bombarded by noise. Eventually, it can no longer hear quiet tones. The same thing happens to your soul. You become deaf to the sacred, the subtle, the beyond the surface. You become immune to the touch of the soul, and then you wonder why you feel so empty despite consuming so much. There is a hunger inside you that is never satisfied. The more you consume, the more it grows, because what your soul seeks does not lie in the next notification. It lies in the silence, in the space between words, in the moment when you are simply being, doing nothing, taking nothing. But you avoid this very moment. You fill every void, every empty moment by diverting your attention elsewhere. And in doing so, you miss the one thing that could truly nourish you. Steiner taught that creative imagination is the key to higher worlds. But this imagination only emerges in silence, in emptiness. In the emptiness, you create yourself. Passive consumption kills this ability. It closes the door to deeper dimensions. You remain trapped in the material world, unable to see what lies beyond. And your soul withers away because it is not nourished. Anthroposophy teaches that humans have three bodies: physical, etheric, and astral. Each of these bodies has its own function, its own rhythm. The physical body needs food and sleep. The etheric body needs rhythm and repetition. The astral body needs impression and expression. It needs beauty, truth, depth. If you feed it only superficial stimuli, it remains hungry despite constant input. This is like junk food for the soul. You fill yourself up, but you don't nourish yourself. Perhaps you are living without an inner anchor. Your day passes in automatic movements. You wake up, you work, you eat, you sleep. But where is the moment when you touch infinity? This fifth habit, living without inner rituals, is the silent killer of spiritual vitality. Steiner issued an urgent warning. A soul without daily connection to the spiritual world is like a plant without water. It doesn't need much. Just a single moment of true gathering is enough. But even that moment is lacking. There is a difference between routine and ritual. Routine is mechanical, unconscious. Ritual is conscious, performed with intention. It is a sacred moment within daily life. It does not have to be religious. It can be a silent pause, conscious breathing, a moment when you remember that you are more than your duties. This moment creates a channel. Through this channel, restorative forces flow that carry you, even if your day is difficult. 5 minutes of genuine interconnection outweighs hours of mechanical prayers. It's not about the form, it's about presence. Being truly there in that moment, your mind not elsewhere. When you create such a ritual, something happens in your etheric body. It reorganizes itself. It finds its center. Powers that would otherwise be scattered come together, and you feel this as inner stability, peace that comes from within. Without this anchor, you are defenselessly exposed to the energies of the world. You have no filter, no boundary. Everything permeates you, unfiltered. Anxiety, fears, the unrest of others. You absorb everything without processing it. Ritual creates a protective space. It is like a shield around you, not to isolate you, but to help you stay with yourself. And it is more than protection. It is a bridge, a connection between your everyday self and your higher self, which is not limited by time, body, or personality. Steiner called this the true self, the divine essence within you. Without ritual, you lose your connection to this essence. You live only with your personality, your ego. And the ego is small, limited, fearful. It cannot carry you. Only the self can do that. Ritual does not have to be complex. It can be consciously lighting a candle, reading a few lines from a spiritual text, giving thanks for a moment before going to sleep. What matters is regularity and awareness. Steiner repeatedly emphasized that the process of repetition in consciousness has a magical power. It creates the etheric body, giving it structure and support. Over time, it creates a space outside of time. And in this space, you can breathe, gather yourself, and return to yourself. There is a confusion that almost everyone makes. You see yourself as your body, your emotions, your thoughts. You completely identify with this personality. Steiner saw this sixth habit, this complete identification with the body and ego, as the greatest illusion. This identification imprisons the spirit in matter. It cannot be free because it sees itself as something it is not. This identification requires energy, tremendous energy. You constantly strive to maintain an image of yourself. You defend your identity, protect your ego, feed your story. All of this consumes spiritual energy, energy that should actually flow freely. But when you try to be someone, this energy becomes bound. Steiner said that the greatest loss of energy lies in clinging to a fixed identity. The soul is fluid, changeable. The ego wants to be rigid, and this contradiction wears you down. There is the ego, a temporary personality shaped by experiences, conditioning, and wounds. And there is the self, the observer, the knower, the eternal essence. Confusing these two means living in constant inner conflict. The ego fights to survive. It fears change, fears dissolution. But the self needs nothing. It simply is. And the more you identify with the ego, the more fear you carry within you. Why is letting go so difficult? Because the ego believes it will die. And in a way, this is true. The old identity must die so that the true self can be born. Steiner taught that this death is necessary, not physical, but psychic, spiritual. Letting go of identification with identity is like dying. And then comes rebirth, a lightness you didn't know before. The energy tied up in holding on is released. It can flow. It can work. It can carry you. When you stop holding on to your story, your wounds, your roles, something strange happens. You feel lighter. Not because the burden is gone, but because you've stopped seeing it as part of yourself. It's there, but it's not you. And in this space between you and your story, you find freedom. The freedom to simply be without having to define yourself. In Steiner's teaching, there is the concept of shells. Your physical body is a shell. Your emotions are a shell. Your thoughts are a shell. And all these shells surround your true self, like layers. When you identify with the sheaths, you forget the essence. You see yourself as the packaging, and then you struggle desperately to protect, improve, and defend this packaging. But the self does not need protection. It is indestructible. It observes the sheaths with calm serenity, not confusing itself with them. There is one final habit, more subtle than the others. It is the refusal to take responsibility, not for your actions, but for your inner life. This seventh habit, spiritual passivity, manifests itself in blaming others, circumstances, the past, even karma. You do everything to avoid acknowledging your power over your inner world. Steiner saw that in this attitude, the human being distances themselves from their own divinity, because responsibility and freedom are inseparable. Someone who does not take responsibility cannot attain freedom. They remain a passive victim at the mercy of external forces. And in this passivity, you waste your spiritual power. In this state, a person waits for someone to come and rescue them. They want an outside hand to heal them, enlighten them, lighten their load. But this never happens. Not because you don't deserve it, but because growth comes from within. Yes, you have suffered. Your wounds are real. Your pain is valid. But when you make this a permanent identity, you refuse to grow. You remain in a wounded position. And this is painfully comfortable. Because as long as you are a victim, you don't have to change. You don't have to take responsibility. You can stay as you are. Karma is not punishment. According to the understanding of Anthroposophy, karma is a field of learning. Every difficulty is an invitation to strengthen your higher self, not because you did something wrong, but because your soul wants to grow. Your soul chose these difficulties, not out of masochism, but out of a love for growth. When you reject this invitation, you stagnate. You remain stuck in the same cycle throughout your lives. Spiritual passivity is like a poison. It whispers that you can do nothing. It tells you to wait for grace, to wait for the right moment. Yet the right moment is always now, and the true Savior is the immortal essence living within the human being, not the ego. Steiner said that many people waste their lives because they don't dare to see their own power. It takes great courage to say, I am here, with this body, with these trials, in this time, because my soul chose it. This choice is not a punishment, it is an opportunity. This perspective changes everything. It removes the role of victim and gives you the role of creator. And with this role comes power. Not the power to control everything, but the power to choose how you react, how you stand internally, where you direct your attention. Now you know. These 7 habits are not abstract. They are concrete, everyday, almost invisible. But their effects are real. They create holes in your energetic body through which your life force escapes. Recognition is the first step. Steiner taught that conscious observation already initiates transformation. You don't have to be perfect. It is enough to be awake. When you recognize one of these patterns in yourself, you strengthen your higher self. This is not about condemning yourself. It is about seeing, recognizing, and, based on this recognition, making different choices whenever possible. Sometimes you cannot do this. Sometimes you are too tired, too hurt. That's okay. Spiritual development is not a sprint. It is a long, patient journey. When you stop losing yourself in these habits, a void emerges. Silence. And in this silence, your spiritual energy renews itself. You don't have to search for it. It is already there. It has always been there. You just couldn't feel it because there was too much noise, too much chaos, too much identification. But when the noise subsides, it returns, like a silent breath carrying you. This is not a promise of quick healing. It is an invitation to a life filled with inner awakening, a life where you are a little more conscious, a little more free, a little more yourself each day. Steiner knew the spiritual path was not easy. It demands everything from you, but it is the only path truly worth taking. Because in the end, external success is not what matters. What matters is the deep peace of a soul that has come to know itself. If this text has stirred something in you, if you feel a genuine resonance, share your thoughts in the comments, not to get a response, but to see what has been stirred within you. And if you wish to continue on this path, subscribe to this channel. Here, quick fixes are not produced. A space is created for souls ready to go deeper. Together, not at the world's pace, but at the soul's pace.